Hi everyone, I'm Dan Cook, Head of Marketing at Bytron Aviation Systems, and welcome to the Skybook webinar 2024 hosted by Aircraft IT. So what makes Skybook unique? Skybook allows flight operations to easily manage dispatch processes by integrating their many separate systems into one solution, while streamlining the flight crew processes with an innovative EFB solution. Other providers display the OFP on their electronic flight bag. Skybook goes much further by breaking it down and incorporating a wealth of information, creating an industry-leading briefing pack that delivers highly interactive and essential insights for the flight crew. Our ground portal utilises all of the completed EFB data from the pilot's journey log, allowing your flight operations team instant access to this information, enabling more informed decision making, improved compliance, and enhanced situational awareness. Our product specialist Sean McLean will now demonstrate the Skybook EFB and show how the completed pilot data is utilised on the ground portal.
So I can go into a flight as a pilot now, and rather than having to worry about a paper briefing, everything you get today in that paper brief can be available on the iPad. And this data is updated and refreshed whenever there is new weather and no time information. If there's any changes to the OFP, then those changes are also shown in the app. So it's as current as the data that you hold today within the ground portal. So within the status section here, you can see when the flight has been, well, the OFP has been uploaded. You can see when it's been downloaded and by who, and when it's been accepted. The moment that's all done within sector briefing in the ground portal, but when you're in the application itself, that's when the power comes through with being able to audit the pilot actions, and you get those status updates as you're moving through the actions within the app itself. What you can see here on the page right now is a copy of the OFP, which would be the first thing your pilots are looking at within the paper PDFs that are being made available today. Within here, I can see the same data that is available from the ground portal. But what we can see here on the left-hand side is it actually broken down into more manageable bite-sized chunks of information. So I can use these as a pilot to start to self-brief in a more efficient way. The other benefit that we have within the app is we have a summary page. And from this summary page, I can actually then start to get a snapshot of what my flying is going to look like. So I can see what my flight details are across the top here. I can add and remove crew. It's an integration where we automate your crew inputs to make life easier for finding sectors and allocating those to your pilots. I can also start to look at my fuel plan, so I can see what my minimum fuel requirement on this sector is going to be. Then I can start going through my weather information for my departure, alternates and destinations. And then we've also got the ability to integrate with third-party MEL maintenance suppliers, so we can start to bring in deferred defect detail. So rather than just being a static weather briefing, having the application available allows your pilots now to get a more dynamic briefing with information coming from other areas of the airline. So they don't have to go into several different systems or several different applications to get the information they need to know to start planning their departure. We also have a really cool integration with Flight Deck Pro. What we can do is select the Flight Deck Pro option here, and it will copy the route string from your OFP and paste that into Flight Deck Pro or Lead OM Pilot or NavBlue Charts Plus, depending on who you might be using for your navigation charts. And that way it'll start to bring up only the charts that are relevant to the flight that's being operated. So traditionally today in those other applications, a pilot might have to manually enter their data. They won't need to do that if they use Skybook, and there's a lot of synergy between Skybook and other applications that a pilot will use on their day-to-day basis. On the left-hand side here, this is where the rest of the briefing material can be found. So I can go into a briefing map, and rather than just having the old paper on glass field charts, I've got several overlays that I can turn off or on within this page. So I can use the icons on the right-hand sides and remove the upper wind and temperature for now. And if I remove the range rings, it clears the chart up. So I can see that my route plots, I can see where there might be areas of clear air turbulence, I can see CB cloud, and I can change the flight levels of which the briefings are relevant to. I can also start to see that a very quick snapshot of weather and NOTAM information for the airfields within my briefing. So the airfield status symbol is split in half, where the top half relates to weather and the bottom half relates to NOTAMs. And it's configured on a traffic light warning system. So red is critical, amber is warning, and green is normal. If I go into my airfield section in a bit more detail on the left-hand side, I can actually see this more clearly at the airfield level. So if I look at Charles de Gaulle, for example, the weather at Charles de Gaulle today is not breaching any of our configured minimas, but which Charles de Gaulle has got a warning NOTAMs in place. And then further down, we've got great weather here, but there is critical NOTAMs in force. But if we look at our departure station first, because that's got probably the best example of the critical minima being breached, and for weather and warning NOTAMs in place, we can then go through the airfield briefing. So rather than having to go through a really overpopulated document, this is now starting to break it down nice and easy for me. I can go through and see that actually the visibility is the reason we've got this critical warning at the top of the airfields symbol, where the visibility is going to reduce down to 700 meters in the METAR, and it's pretty foggy at the moment. And then looking in the TAF, actually it's going to improve. It's going to improve, and although there is still some fog and mist in the TAF, actually the overall forecast is for conditions to improve. And then the NOTAMs is probably where the biggest difference between the PDF product you see today and what the pilots can use in the app comes, because we can now filter based on those critical warning and normal criterias. So if I go back into Charles de Gaulle, for example, and I can see that there's 6 NOTAMs here, and I click on warning, that now brings up just the one NOTAM that is classified as warning based on your operational configuration in Skybook. If I go into this airfield here, I can see there's 8 NOTAMs, and I go to critical. That's now showing me the 2 most critical NOTAMs. So I don't need to go into the depth of looking at every single NOTAM in the briefing. If I'm operating to an airfield that's got maybe 30, 40 NOTAMs, but only 2 of them are critical, I'm able to get to that data much more efficiently, and I can bookmark it as well. So I can make a bookmark and quickly put a note in to say it's a critical, and then that bookmark is available for me wherever I am within the application. I can return back to that NOTAM to remind myself of the data that I read when I was doing my briefing, which is far more easier than trying to maybe turn a page corner on a PDF note, or trying to remember that those NOTAMs are there. It's really easy in the app to find that data. It's the same methodology for FIRs. If I just go into one here, so the top half relates to SIGMET, and as you can see, it's only Barcelona that's got SIGMET at the moment, and the bottom half relates to NOTAMs, exactly the same as the airfields. So the red's for critical, yellow's or amber is warning, and green is normal. We then give the charts, so the crews are then able to go through and check these charts if they prefer to do that this way rather than looking at it on the interactive map itself. And then notices. So all we do is we bring those in to the application. So again, rather than having to look for them in the PDF document, it's all available broken down into bite-sized chunks in the app. And then you can see there you've got your sector attachment that's associated with this flight. The power that we have now in the app is what comes next, because this is where you can start to collate data, which is going to help you guys build on-time performance reports, understand your fuel usage, and start to build more accurate data sets within the airline so that you can find efficiencies, you can find better ways of working, and you can highlight where you've got problems. So we have a variety of forms split into a pre-flight, in-flight, and post-flight workflow, whereby you can configure majority of these fields and forms yourself. But in essence, this is the opportunity for you as an airline to collate data that's most important to you. So for example, in this pre-flight example, we can decide what the nature of flight is. So I can say that this was just an operational network support flight. I can say whether a security check or search has been completed. I can capture my APU data, and that can be then reported back to our technical records teams. Fuel planning can be done here, and don't be alarmed if this fuel planning doesn't meet your requirements. We have several different fuel planning forms that we can work through with you. And anywhere that you're seeing a red asterisk next to a field name means that that's a mandatory field. So you as the airline are telling the pilots what has to be completed in order for them to sign off the data. So that means you're able to safeguard the data that you're going to get back, and you can ensure the inputs are going to be completed. Now, what we're not trying to do is cause havoc for a pilot and make them have to complete loads of forms and loads of fields. So we can really strip this back to make it as simple as you want it to be, or we can make it as detailed as you as an operator may need it to be as well. So there is a lot of flexibility in the customization available within the app. You can take photographs around the application as well. So whenever you're receiving a fuel slip, or you've got your load sheet, or there's any ground service receipts, these can be stored within the data that comes from the application, and that'll be stored in your record vault. So you don't have to retain those paper slips anymore when you're using the app. A digital copy will be retained in the record vault once this post-flight data has been recorded. And you can add up to 12 photographs per flight. So there's plenty of storage available, and plenty of capacity for recording photographs. And that's the same when you're capturing ATIS and ATC data. So rather than having to write it down on a paper OFP, I can do this in the application. I can either do a keyboard entry, I can do a scribble pad entry, or if I've just written it down on my lap really quickly because it's come through over the headset and I've just had to quickly scribble it down, I can take a photograph of a photograph copy of that, a photograph copy of the FMS if it's come through the FMS instead, or I can upload an image from the gallery on the iPad as well. So there's a lot more flexibility in how the data can be collated in here. There are opportunities in the app for the captains and first officers to leave free text comments that can be distributed around the rest of the departments in the airline as well. And I'll come on to those a little bit more in post-flight. We also have within the workflow 2 validation points. We have the pre-flight validation point, where the crew are signing to say that they are happy that they've had their brief, they're happy that they've got the right amount of fuel on board. And as far as the regulator's concerned, that's the pilot saying we're good, we're ready to fly. And then we have the post-flight sign-off, which is when the flight is complete and the captains are committing that data back to the airline. Before then, obviously, we have to go and fly. So we can do our off blocks and airborne here. We can capture delays automatically. So if I said I was off blocks now and airborne at 1500 and go into the delays, it auto calculates the delay. So the crew have got to just select what the delay was for. They can save it, and then that will start to come back into reporting and analytics and build your on-time performance information up. So you can start to see, where are we having the worst delays on the network? Is it down to a particular thing? Are our ground services working correctly? Are we always delayed because of late boarding here? Is it actually we've got maintenance problems? But until you start getting that data live and building those reports post-flight, it's very difficult to see the trends. Skybook solves that and brings the data back to you in an easy place to find it, and makes it a lot more manageable. Load sheet, again, a lot of these fields can be changed and configured to your preference, but you can take information from the load sheet here, and if you're on a manual load sheet, you can take a photograph of those and add those into the record vault. Same for ground services, so I can collate all of the ground services that I've received here. And the same for any de-icing that may take place as well. So essentially any service that you've received on the ground at your departure station, that can be compiled within the app here. And the receipts for de-icing, air stairs, things like that, they can all be included in the record vault. A lot of the customers that are using the apps today striving for is the automatic collation of data from a nav log. We're pushing this forward with AID connectivity, but in the interim, this is a really intuitive tool that allows your crews to annotate in real time the time they've hit a waypoint, how much fuel they've got on board, and the flight level. So that legal requirement of a waypoint check every 60 minutes, rather than having to write it down on a piece of paper, it's all available to be done within the application itself. And then that is stored with your post-flight data, as we said, up to 5 years. So you're not having to try and find space for a load of paper envelopes full of voyage reports. You're not having to go into different archives to find that data. It's all coming from the single point of truth in Skybook. Within here, I can route direct, I can search for waypoints, I can add waypoints, I can monitor my fuel. So if here I'm, say, 7900, the crew will start to get notification and warnings within the nav log, so that they can see in real time how their fuel performance is going. And we can also look to add notes here. So the same way you'd add notes on your paper OFPs, you can still do that within this system. You can capture your arrival latest and clearance as you're starting to get closer to your top of descent. And the other great thing is you can do your altimeter RVSM checks as well when you're in that controlled airspace. Then once the flight's completed, we can jump out the nav log. We can take the landing and on blocks times, Cat 2, Cat 3 approaches and LVP approaches, auto lands and bits like that can all be captured here as well. Information that might not be necessarily important to the pilot, but it's important to the rest of your airline to understand the currency of your pilots when certainly within reduced visibility operations, and also auto lands rotations of your aircraft itself. We can annotate the handling pilot again, so keeping up currencies of landings and takeoffs. We can select either the PIC or the FO, or we can actually have that as named pilots if we get an integration with your schedule provider. Landing and cycles are important for your technical records teams, so we can provide that data to them. Arrival fuel, and the fuel that you arrive with in this sector will be available to retrieve on the next sector on this aeroplane. So again, automation that's helping with the continuous planning and the continuous operation of your airline. And then, as I mentioned in the pre-flight, we've got something what we call electronic journey log comments, or EGL comments. And this is just an area for your crew to make free text comments about absolutely anything. It could be the captain's chair armrest is a little bit defective, needs somebody to come and look at it. I can type this into this comments box. I can include the engineering team as an email addressee on a list here. And once I sign this sector off, the maintenance team will get an email straight away to say, this aircraft, this captain, this flight, this time has said that the captain's armrest is a little bit loose and needs somebody to look at it. So they don't have to spend now time in a turnaround on the phone trying to talk to the line maintenance engineers or trying to fill out long forms or anything that's slowing the operation down. They can just quickly pass these messages through. So again, just another way that we can make things a bit more efficient. And whilst we're talking about efficiency, we've also got our library in the app where we can store MEL data, OMA manuals, anything that the pilots have to use today as a reference can be stored within our document library. It gets stored as a PDF with a search function, so they can go through and search for the key detail that they're looking for. And they don't have to carry big, expensive paper manuals around with them or rely on other third-party systems. It can all be stored within Skybook. And we also have what we call e-forms from our form builder module. So air safety reports, captain's training reports, discretion reports, Gendex, anything that is a form that your crew have to complete today can be completed in the ground portal, can be constructed, and I can run a session on this another time when we have a bit more time available. But we can ensure that anything that is paper-based is converted into what we call a smart form. Now, the smart forms will automatically populate the date and time. It will automatically populate the flight number, the aircraft registration in use. So the crew only actually have to input the data that they want to report. They're saving time. They're not having to repeat data that's already available from the information you've given us today. And it's just a very easy way of capturing information that's important to you as the airline. And rather than then having to wait for paperwork to be emailed or scanned or sent back in a void report and hit the ops desk 2 or 3 weeks later, you're getting the instant information back to you, and you're not having to wait arduous amounts of time or look in different places for the information that matters most to you guys in making operational decisions and building efficiency to save money and operate more smoothly. So that's the app itself. I'm just going to drop into one of our dummy accounts just to show you what those reports look like. So it's all housed within reporting analytics. The first one I'm going to look at is the on-time performance. And here you can see straight away you've got the ability to create a number of different KPIs. So you can look at your overall on-time performance. You can look at delays based on a certain amount of times. So how are we doing with 5, 10, 15-minute delays? I can go right down to an arrival airport or a departure airport, and I can start to drill into the detail as to where my delays are occurring. So if I go into London Heathrow, for example, I can see that here I had a delay for 398 minutes due to delay code 12, and I can look at the data granularly like this, or I can actually export it as a CSV file. I can also look at it and set filters based on the days of operation that I want to look for, flight numbers that have been impacted, aircraft registrations. So I can make the report as granular as I want. And then once I download it as a CSV file, I can share it around the airline for discussion and hopefully improvement, especially if it's a particular department, such as maintenance, perhaps, that are causing delays in a particular airport. And this is data that's taken straight from the app. So on that delay form, as soon as that's been completed and submitted as part of the post-flight submission, then that data is live straight away in here. So you're getting a real-time build-up of your on-time performance. And the same goes for fuel. So I can see a 30, 60, 90-day snapshot of the planned fuel from your OFP data today. And then I can see the actual fuel being used by the data that's collated in the app by the pilots. I can see what my highest burning routes are, which aircraft are burning have got the highest burn, and actually even draw that down further to what your highest burning fleet is. And then we can provide further analysis on your routes, planned versus actual burn, your planned versus actual block fuel, and then the planned versus actual arrival fuel, using the static data from your OFP and then the dynamic data coming out of the app, so that you can start to make more informed decisions around, actually, is that the right aircraft for the routes for this route based on the fuel usage? Are our pilots taking more fuel on this route? Is there something wrong with the dispatch process? But without that data here, you're not able to make those informed decisions because you can't see the trend data. And it's all coming from the single point of truth in Skybook. So finally, as part of our reporting analytics, we have our record vault. Within the record vault, you can get all of the post-flight data, start to compare and contrast whether or not your pilots are actually signing off the sectors and voyages they should be. As you can see from the example here, actually, we've only had 2 sectors complete this month against 438 OFPs received. So that's giving a good instant snapshot to your record vault users that potentially something is wrong. But the idea here is that we can hold data in the record vault for up to 5 years. The industry standard is 90 days, but that data can be stored for up to 5 years as per the needs of the airline. And it's where your single point of truth data from the application comes. So we collate all of the pre-flight data from your OFP, from the various weather and NOTAM sources that we have, combine that with a single point of truth data from the application, and then bring that back into a nice, easy to work record vault. When I say nice and easy to work, the format here is very similar to the dispatch module. So every flight has its own dedicated line. The columns can all be sorted and filtered. And we can also move the columns around as well. So we can edit how this looks. If we don't want as many columns of information and data, we can choose to hide some of those. And we can also move columns through just click and drag to make it easier to find the information that we're looking for. If I take the SDM 1801 flight for an example, I can click on the 3 dots on the right hand side, and I can get access to the sector data here. I can download a copy of the voyage report PDF. For our flight tracking customers, I can also get our flight tracking file. I can also lock the sector. The significance of being able to lock the sector is if there's a big incident or that we need to restrict the amount of people that can see any of the data relating to this flight, I can lock this sector so only a super admin user can see it. That means that nobody else can stumble across the data by mistake. There can be no false assumptions made during investigations, and only the right people at the right time can see the data that the pilots were using. Post investigations and things like that, we can unlock the sector and then make that available for everybody else in the airline to use as part of their role. But in those immediate moments after an emergency or an emerging incident, that data can be locked down and prevented from being shared. Looking at the sector data, this is the data that you're then trying to protect. So within here, I've got crew names, I've got the crew operating hours, and I've got the information around the crew. I've got the information of when those status updates were made. We saw them earlier in the dispatch page, but I've got date timestamps for when the crew were updated, when the OFP was uploaded, and the plan number, when that voyage got created and downloaded, and a fuel order sent through, when the sector's accepted, and when those sign-offs are completed. And everything here has got the name and the role of the person that was completing those tasks. I've got my delays information here and also my fuel comparison. The rest of this record vault is laid out very similar to the app. So the information that's being collated in the app is being pretty much reflected in the record vault here. So I've got my pre-flight, in-flight and post-flight sections, my nav log, assets and reports. Now reports are broken down into commanders reports, delay reports, ground services and de-icing. And wherever there has been something captured by the crew on the app, it's being saved in the record vault here. So you can see here that there was a bus requested, and also that we had the delay code 11 for the late check-in, and the 17 minutes of delay there. And then finally, just for going through on this part of the webinar for the assets. Assets is a great place to find any extra data that was involved in the briefing pack. So we've got the final voyage report that's available here. Any forms that have been completed and submitted by the crew, they can also be found here, as well as being emailed to the form's author and also being stored within the form builder module. So lots of different ways to find those forms. Any sector attachments, so your NOTOX, Gendex, standing PDFs and things like that, they can all be retrieved. And even if they were archived, but they were once part of this briefing pack, they can also be seen within the record vault. And then finally, we've got the voyage data. So this is raw JSON data that we can extract and send on to a third party, and then they can then parse and take out the important bits for them. And that's how you can then start to use this single point of truth from our record vault within other tools, whether it's an MRO tool, an ops planning tool, a crew management system. Ultimately, if they need data that's being collated on the flight deck, we can give that back post-flight because we have that here. You can also open a copy of your original PDF briefing from this point as well. And that's the record vault.
Now, let's take a quick look at some of the new features we've added this year.